I recently posted a series of videos on thru-hiking physiology. In this video, I hope to frame those earlier observations under the canopy of a broader concept known as REDS, Relative Energy Deficiency in Sport. REDS is a diagnosable condition that consists of one or more medical conditions combined with impairments in exercise performance. The central cause of REDS is known to be low energy availability. And what that implies is that there's a low amount of energy available to the body to do its everyday functions after we subtract off how much energy has been expended on exercise. It's just a matter of taking total energy intake and subtracting off of it exercise energy expenditure. Then we often express energy availability per unit of fat-free mass. We have four categories. High energy availability. This provides enough energy for all of our needs and a little bit extra. So if we're in a state where we're maybe in a growth phase, maybe strength training and putting on muscle mass, this would be what's ideal. 45 seems to be the sweet spot. It's not a surplus, it's not a deficiency. It's kind of thought that that's how much we need. Now it can be a little bit less than that. 30 to 45 is what we call reduced energy availability. And this is a situation that's thought to be sort of a marginally low energy availability, not quite enough to do everything that we need to do. But in this context, we often mobilize a little extra energy from energy stores in the body, and that comes primarily from body fat. The red flag goes up when energy availability drops below 30. 30 is thought to be the critical threshold below which there's not enough energy for the body to do all of its exercise and maintain its normal physiologic function. As a consequence, then we end up with medical problems that result. It's not a guarantee that if your energy availability drops below 30 that you're going to have medical problems, but the risk is much higher. So energy availability on the Pacific Crest Trail, the data I'm going to show you here are from a case report that I published in a biomedical journal, and I'll put a link to that journal article in the description below. So starting off, energy intake as measured on the Pacific Crest Trail was 4141 calories per day. Let's just say 4,100 calories per day. Exercise energy expenditure, this is walking energy expenditure from the hiking, was a little over 2,800 calories per day. This doesn't count anything else, setting up tent, doing laundry, shopping for groceries. This is strictly the exercise portion. So if we can put that into our equation for energy availability, we have 4141 minus 2834 gives us about 1,300 calories per day of energy availability. And then we express it for the amount of fat-free mass I had on the trail, which was 67 kilograms. That gives us 19 kilocalories of energy per kilogram fat-free mass per day. Where does that fall into the table? It's well below that threshold of 30. Pretty clear case of low energy availability. So if low energy availability is central to REDS, then it's important to understand what REDS presents itself as. So let's go through all of the possible things that might show up if a person develops REDS. One of the things that we often see in this sort of situation when there's low energy availability and a person has REDS is compromised reproductive function. In women, they may stop having their periods. In men, there may be a reduction in sex hormones or sperm production. We can also see bone loss, gastrointestinal problems. Metabolism tends to slow to conserve energy. Blood can be compromised. In particular, you can develop anemia. Bladder control can be compromised. Blood lipids can go high and blood sugars can go low. Mental health problems such as anxiety and depression. Cognition can be impaired, difficulty in making decisions and thinking clearly. Sleep problems can develop. Cardiovascular function can be compromised, as well as muscle strength. These are both health and exercise related. It can compromise growth. And lastly, it's known to compromise immune function. Coming back to things that I experienced, and as I described in the earlier videos, I did have massive bone loss. Now, I did not have stress fractures or other clinically relevant manifestations that would be bone problems, but I did have enormous amount of bone loss during my hike. Probably a period of maybe a week, maybe a little more, where I had gastrointestinal problems. But there's so many different things that can cause gastrointestinal problems. So I don't want to say that this is by all means a case of low energy availability causing GI distress, but GI distress is consistent with the possibility of REDS. Another thing that I experienced and described in the previous videos is the very large increase in total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, and triglycerides that I experienced on the PCT. And then lastly, 3 occasions of really being down in the dumps mentally, very low on motivation, maybe even kind of depressed state. I'm actually feeling uncertainty about whether I'm going to actually finish this trip right now. Starting to wonder what this is all about that I'm doing out here. Kind of sad. I feel sad right now. Mental health problems like this, depression, anxiety, whatever, these can be caused by a number of different things. So I'm not saying that low energy availability caused these. It's possible that it did, but it's also possible that many other things would have been responsible for that. So kind of coming back to the title of this video, red S on the PCT, question mark. In terms of whether or not I had overt diagnosed red S, I can say unequivocally, no, I did not. Because I never went in for a workup, that's impossible. Occult, which is a term we use for disease that's maybe present, but it's not detectable, it's possible. It's possible that I had REDS and it was just not diagnosed. Do I really think that was the case? I would say probably high risk for REDS, but probably not a case of overt REDS. So if I had low energy availability and I didn't develop REDS, then what gives? How do you explain that? My energy intake, I think I gave it to you, the average was 4,100 calories per day. But I promise you, it varied enormously around that. So energy intake at times was as low as 2,200 calories per day. And at times it was 7,000 calories per day. 2,200 calories a day when I was running low on food, and resupplies were very difficult to get to. In particular, I'm thinking of the High Sierras. Typical daily food ration is, well, I got 1 box of cold cereal that is divided up into 5 portions for these most 5 days. Typically, lunch is 1 pack of ramen noodles, and dinner is a package of stovetop stuffing, and then maybe throw in another granola bar and a pack of peanuts, and that's it. And I could honestly eat 2 or 3 times that. There were other times during the thru-hike that I probably ate 7,000 calories in a day. Where was that? That was in town. There it is, the standard dinner for a thru-hiker. Exercise energy expenditure in town was 0. On the other hand, some of the longest days on the trail were as high as 5,300 calories per day. So enormous variation. If you do the math on those, the numbers end up coming up in a wide range, anything from 0 or less than 0. And by the way, it's impossible to have an energy availability of 0 or less than 0. These calculations fall apart with those kind of values. They're just not appropriate to be used. But whatever the case, and very, very, very low energy availability on some days, whereas on other days, it was 100 calories per kilogram fat-free mass per day. Kind of the sweet spot is 45, so this is more than double that. And you can only imagine if your body's been starving for calories because you've been out on the trail, and now you show up in town and you eat all this food. Well, any of that damage that had accrued while you were starved, essentially, your body's going to grab those calories, put them to work, and it's a good chance it's going to do lots of repair to get your body back together so that you can get back out on the trail and then go back into the tank again. In a nutshell, I think probably cycles of low energy availability were offset by periods of very high energy availability, and that allowed a lot of sort of catch-up work to be done. So what about other thru-hikers? I would be enormously surprised if nobody gets REDS on the trail. Are there any studies to show how many hikers get REDS? Absolutely not. To my knowledge, the only piece of biomedical research literature is this little case report that I published. But I hope that this might lead some other researchers to maybe investigate, is this something that's showing up during thru-hikes? I would be really surprised if it's not. And also, I'd be really surprised if it's not a major reason for a lot of hikers having to abandon the trail. Very clearly, I didn't have a case of overt REDS. I was not diagnosed with REDS. However, I think there's a small possibility that maybe I did have REDS on an occult sort of subclinical level. What about other thru-hikers? Speculation. I think it probably happens a lot, and I think oftentimes it might be seen if you were to go out and try to find out who those people are, they'd be the ones that are leaving the trail because of either psychological problems or bone fractures or other problems. But there is no evidence for this. There's nothing published on it, and I would love to see that area of science grow so that we can better understand what's going on. But what does all this mean? What does it have to do with anybody that might want to go through hiking? I have no intention of discouraging people from through hiking and saying that this is bad for you. Rather, I just think it's important to be aware of what problems might develop. Then you can take action to prevent them, hopefully. So that's the goal here, is that this gives you some tools so that you can better prepare yourself and better take strategies while through hiking to prevent a possible case of REDS from developing. I'm going to wrap up this video series after one more video. I do want to go a little more into the nutrition. And it's not going to be like, here's a recipe that you should eat and so on and so forth. Rather, it's going to be more looking at macronutrients and micronutrients, how much I consumed, what maybe I could have done better, and try to use that to inform you and others of what strategies might be prudent for optimizing nutrition for a successful thru hike. I hope this was helpful, and I sincerely thank you for your attention.